All right, we're on. I probably say the same thing every week, but all right. Well, welcome to I guess the second stream of the summer. Third stream of the summer. And all is well. And I mean, all is well for me, basically. No. Espera un momentito, tengo que enviar un mensaje a Julie. No. Un momento. All right, there we go. All right, man. Hey, anyway, we are yeah, just a lot going on, man. So much going on in the news, so much happening. I thought what I would love to do is, well, I have a bunch of things different things I've picked out that to talk about, but like I'm sitting in this place right now. First off, if you're a person who fairly recently started listening to Social 19 or hopping into office hours or whatever, and I say recently in the past couple of years, you really, we're this is a sociology class, right? So we're trying to explain the world and why things happen in the way they do, and also there's a certain critique element to sociology, right? Because one is that I mean, for one thing, we're if you're doing really good sociology, you're seeing things that are kind of self-evident on second glance, but on first glance, they're not necessarily. I always liken it to stand-up comedy. It's so common that I listen to stand-up comedians, and when they say something, I think, oh wow, that's it's funny or whatever. And then kind of following that up, it's almost just as quickly as it happens, I think, oh yeah, I've had a similar observation. But I haven't had that. I may have had a similar observation, but I only recognize the observation after I hear somebody saying it. So sociology is kind of like that. It's people talk about it as the study of the obvious. And in some ways it is if you're not doing very good sociology. But if you're doing interesting sociology, then you're kind of the fish swimming upstream, but you're talking about things and narrating things as you go along. But in any case, there's also an element of critique to it because, we're trying to break down the world to understand the world. We're trying to understand the world, but understanding it, you sort of have to break it down into certain parts. And when you do that, then, oftentimes you're gonna have to stumble over power and decision making and structure and systems and both the good and the bad of the way systems operate. And that's just the nature of it, right? I mean, everything's good and bad. So you're going to encounter things that are that we trip over, right? That's how it is. People see it as this kind of leftist field of study, but I think as Dan and I were saying last week, it's not really left. I mean, well, it is, but sociology emerged as a way to study social problems and to understand why the problems were emerging as they were, right? Because a lot of times it's like families or work or anything, like there's no need to make any changes if everything is running smoothly. But when things aren't really running smoothly, then you want to start. I'd start talking about the problems, and nothing runs perfectly smoothly, right? So at any moment in time, whatever the system is that you're looking at, there's always problems. There's always something that we're struggling over. And sometimes some of us can focus on problems all the time, and sometimes those people, but but all of us can at some point in time turn our attention to the problems. I suppose it's like news, I'm always saying that news is broadcasting in the world kind of what's rare and what's uncommon. But nonetheless, a single murder in a city the size of New York or LA or Chicago or Tokyo or Paris or London or Cape Town, South Africa, uh, it's single murder is still a problem, or 5 murders in a day. I mean, that kind of thing. So anyway, and they're worth looking at or figuring out how you can change that. Okay, so that's my long-winded way of saying that. Yeah, it's stuff I want to talk about today a little bit, but regarding the current administration in the United States, there's some other things too. But if you followed me my whole career, you would know that whoever's in power in the U.S. gets analyzed, right? So it doesn't matter if we go back to me kind of when I taught my very first class, Ronald Reagan was in power and then Bush, and then Clinton, and and it doesn't matter who it is. There's a criticism, there's a certain critique element to it, and so right now I have so much to say about Trump, but so much that I so many kind of actually troubling things. The difference is that I'm a little reticent to say too much because people, unless you've been part of my reality for 20 or years or so, right? I mean, somehow it was just easier to critique Obama, and I did it much more often because there wasn't pushback from the left or from the Obama supporters in the way that there's pushback from the Trump supporters. Or Biden supporters, there wasn't pushback from Biden supporters. It was almost like, yeah, okay, go ahead and critique this guy. It wasn't that somebody like me got, nobody ever complained because I critiqued Obama or Biden or Clinton for that matter. But now in this world of Trump, man, yeah, it's just a lot of, it's not so easy. And, people are far more thin-skinned in an odd way. Well, I think it's partly the people who have been activated under the current under this, Donald Trump, right? So, any case, so I had um, I'm not sure which one of these to put up. Here, I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna just show. I just. By the way, I really yeah, I think I know. I think I do a pretty good job of reading the news for myself. I mean, I've been doing it for I don't know how long have I been really carefully reading the news. 4.5 decades, right? In the beginning, I wasn't really careful because I didn't know how to read the news. And I didn't know how to think about it. And I didn't know where to look when I saw something that just felt just really not quite right. I didn't know where or how to look to get another perspective on it. And now I have such a very sensitive monitoring system in place. When I read something about somebody or some issue or some event, that just it's almost like it provokes me in a certain way. And then I know if I get provoked, then I think, wait, hang on a second. What is that? What just happened right there? And was that maybe not so much designed, maybe the writer didn't design the story or write the story in a way to provoke me to have a certain kind of reaction. Um, but can I trust that reaction? And is the thing that really jumped out at me, is it real? Is it true? Is it real? Is that the only way to see it? There must be another way to see it. So now, regardless of what I'm reading, I'm always seeking to say, okay, hang on, that just seems so obviously right down this path right here. What what if I turned around and saw it from the other direction, and I just do that all the time. So um, in any case, um, I can read the New York Times because, first off, I don't read the opinion pages of the New York Times. So almost whoever the opinion editor is of the New York Times is very much, it's a kind of they have a left orientation that's it's an orientation that I just don't really appreciate at this point in my life. I did at one point in time when I was younger, but at this point I don't. And so I just don't read the opinion pieces. I hardly read opinion pieces anywhere, actually, except in The Economist. I just find the opinion pieces in The Economist to be just different in a certain sense, right? But opinion pieces they're written so often. I don't want to go into it because I don't know. I'm not a journalist. I don't really do a deep critique of the news. But reporting coming from the Times is different. And so anyway, I'm going to just show a couple of things. And a lot of times I'll see things and I'll jump onto different. I'll go, like the BBC or um, Reason, or I'll go to, the a different, Le Monde. I'll go internationally, look internationally, see what people are saying about it. And anyway, hang on, let me share this screen. There you go, Jeff. I just shared. Um, I just I I saw this article. Well, first off, actually, I should share this one. Actually, this came out the other day. This guy. Um, he's the so this so President Trump just appointed this guy, Bill Pulte. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Pulte, I guess. I don't know. And as the as acting intelligence director. Okay. Now, who is this guy? Right? Like, wait, acting intelligence director. So, you think about the layers of, see who we are as a nation. Think about our position in the world as a nation. Think about the layers of intelligence that are happening. It doesn't matter who the director is, really, in a certain sense, right? I mean, well, except it does matter. I mean, you got these agencies that are in place, right? They're operating. The vast majority of people in the agencies are doing what they're doing today is what they did a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, right? I mean, unless they moved into a different position, whoever the director is doesn't really change much of anything. Just like Penn State, we can get a new president, but or a company like Shell Oil or Nabisco or God, whatever it is, they get a new CEO, but the vast majority of people who are working for the organization are doing the same damn thing, right? Day in and day out, and they're not going to change. And I think about, like I talked about this, just whatever the government is. You have millions and millions of people who are the government, and the vast majority, the person at the DMV, right? Division of Motor Vehicles, 8 miles from my house. Nothing changes there. It's that people go to work day after day after day, right? So that's the vast majority of people in government. But nonetheless, right, this guy, so he's acting intelligence director. Now, this guy had been head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. So think about, like, Freddie Mae and Fannie Mac, or Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and this kind of thing, right? This guy's like the grandson of the founder of the Pulte Group, right? It's a home building company, right? So this guy, so Trump, he had no experience to be head of to be in that other position, right? Um, but he was put in there, and now he's gonna vet national security interests, right? Like, who is that? Like, who does this? Like, who puts who puts this guy in such a position in the most powerful nation in the world, right? Who puts this guy in charge of national intelligence, right? To the acting directors, like, and even though most people in the under the agencies are going to be doing the same thing day in and day out, it doesn't matter. He nonetheless has such a sway at the very least over Trump because he's going to be in the room having Trump's ear. And you know, whoever has Trump's ear, it's really important because he doesn't follow the same paths that other people follow, right? You don't, if you don't understand that, you please just anyway. So I came upon this and the same thing. These war games. So you know, the U.S. we every nation does this, but we do these war games forever and ever and ever. We're just doing war games, man, just constantly. It's endless that people are setting up scenarios and looking at scenarios. And we've been talking for decades, you know, about, listen, man, you know, if we go after Iran, one of the reasons you don't go after Iran is is we haven't. Hang on, I stopped sharing right there. People say, like, well, even right now, we could just bomb Iran off the map, right? Why don't we do that? Well, you don't do that, A, because it's like the level of destruction, the level of the sort of death and destruction. Think about Israel, what Israel has done inside of Gaza, just the amount of destruction. And then you got the amount of people who have died, the number of people who have died, the amount of absolute destruction that has happened. So now what are you going to do? Like, you're gonna put it back together somehow. Or B, you're going to have to suffer the consequences of that because now you've just created such an immense amount of bad blood. And so now what are we going to, we're going to do this in Iran, let's say. Okay, so what then? How are we going to put it back? What are we going to do? Like, who does that? What nation? Which is why, you know, Putin could just go and could just start bombing the hell out of Kyiv and different major cities in Ukraine and just you think bring them to their heels, but you can't do that, man. Who does that? Like, imagine that happened in the United States. Imagine that 9/11 wasn't just New York City, but it was Atlanta and Chicago and Nashville and State College and God knows wherever. Man, like, who does that? How does that get you where you want to get? So that's why we don't bomb the hell out of Iran, even though, you know, tr President Trump has threatened that. No one in the right mind imagines that we're going to do that, right? And so, you know, think about the end of World War II and just the immense destruction that we brought about. Okay, so all these warnings about Iran, like, listen, man, if you start bombing, they really can close down the waterway, and you're not going to bring them to to your heel. Like, you're not going to get them to stop and bow down to you and do whatever you want them to do. Like, you can't. That's not going to happen. And so you know that these are really smart intelligence gathering people who've been working with the Iranians. You know, I listened to a long story about the guy who was sort of leading the charge of the agreement that the United States signed with Iran under President Obama, and how many years it took to do that, and the back and forth, and everything that went into that, man, by people who have been building trust back and forth for so many years. And we can, you know, we have a new administration comes in and just rip it up and say, okay, we're not doing that, and now we're gonna do it my way or our way. It's like, it doesn't work that way. And these folks said that, but you know, we have a president who doesn't listen to these advisors in the way that probably would imagine being useful to do. And then I think, okay, well, we got this guy who is involved in, he's the grandson of this guy that built this housing construction company. Guy knows nothing about national intelligence whatsoever. He's not about it. He got put in this other position. Just like, oh my God, well, Federal Housing Finance Agency? Like, come on, man. Seriously? And then now he's going to be this acting director in national intelligence. It's like, so here we go, man. This is it. Y'all right? Like this to me, this is it's almost it's truly almost incomprehensible, to be honest. And if you're following, there's so many things like this, of course, it's day in and day out, day in and day out. If you're following it, you just like my head just I can't, that look right there is just, ah, that's the best I can do, man. So, wow. Yeah. I don't know. Things are not, yeah, that's all I'm going to say. And I hold back on a lot. I don't talk to my students about it, obviously, because they just have no, that's not what the class is about. And so it's not, they don't, it's irrelevant. 20 years ago, I would have brought that into class and talked about it. But 20 years ago, my students didn't really give a damn. The vast majority didn't understand and they didn't give a damn. And today, the vast majority wouldn't understand and they don't give a damn either. So, and so it doesn't matter. That's not what teaching is. I wouldn't have spent a whole class on this, but I would have used it as an example of something. And but now I don't at all because I realize, well, you can't even move the needle in any way. You just got to do the best to help people begin to understand certain things. And then they either go off on their own to learn it or they don't, man. And that's kind of what it is. So, but wow, man, those two things, just those two things coming together, uh, are are pretty powerful, man. Yo, man, hang on. Oh no, there's Laurie's taking care of it. Whew. All right, I thought I had to go answer the door. All right. Okay, so there we go. All right. What's the next one? Uh, here's the thing that I thought was kind of cool. All right, we ready? Um, talked about this before. Wait, uh, hang on. Let's go. All right. So here's this issue. It's kind of really birthright. These are the things that, first off, all this stuff is so complicated. Um, uh, everything is complicated, man. Everything can be seen as positive and negative and pros and cons. And even having this knucklehead guy, what's his name? Bill Pulte, even having this guy as acting intelligence director, I suppose there's something positive about it. I don't know. You know what I mean? Something positive will come out of it. Maybe it just will learn to never do that again. But who knows? I don't know. Maybe I'll make, I just have to frame. Most everything has both positive and negative consequences. How about if I say that? Not everything, but most everything. Anyway, so here's this really interesting article about birthright citizenship. This woman here is Nigerian, by the way, and she was born 5 months, no, 5 weeks after Ireland passed or struck down its birthright citizenship. So two of her older, she's the youngest of five kids, Nigerian immigrants that went to Ireland. She's the youngest of five. The first two were born in Nigeria. The second two were born in Ireland, so they were citizens. And she was born in Ireland, but 5 weeks after they passed, they halted the practice of granting birthright citizenship to children. And birthright citizenship is when you're born, when you have citizenship of the nation in which you were born. And not all nations do this, but quite a number of them do. I forget how many do. I don't remember what it is, but it's quite a number of them. The United States is not alone, by the way. Somebody should look that up and put it in the chat. But in any case, imagine that, man. Her whole life changed because she was born if she had been born 5 weeks premature, everything would be different. But anyway, she was a Nigerian citizen for the first 18 years of her life. And then she had to just go through paperwork upon paperwork. And then ultimately, when she turned 18, she was able to get citizenship in Ireland. They didn't kick her out or anything. They didn't, but she was born on Irish soil, but anyway. So what's really interesting is that, I was reading about this because I'm always trying to figure out like what the pros and cons are. I mean, it does seem kind of odd to me that, with birthright citizenship, hang on, I'm going to stop the stream for a second. Not stop the stream, stop the sharing. Hang on, Jeff, I'm going to come back to it in a second. I just want to riff for a few minutes. It does seem odd to me that a nation would decide, that people who are born on its soil are just by their birthright are citizens of that nation, right? Now, mind you, but here in the United States, of course, we do. This goes back 150 or 160 years, I think. And when we did that, it was a time in which, we truly wanted people to be coming to the United States, and we wanted to grant that it was much easier to get citizenship here. People came here, and especially from European soil, you came on a ship, you had some kind of passage. I mean, people paid for entry. I mean, people just they weren't stowaways. I mean, you show up and you have to have it did cost, for the vast majority of people, it costs something, right? And but there are reasons to do that, which make a lot of sense, right? And so, but there was this international team of researchers, and they just have. Hang on, I'm gonna share the screen again. I have my screen again. It's kind of interesting. So, and by the way, most nations in the world, they require at least one parent to be a citizen of that country, right? So in order to get citizenship. And I mean, one of the things is, you can just sort of cross over the border. And wealthy people, of course, have been doing this forever in the United States. You're wealthy, but you're, residents of Chile, and you can easily get a visa to the United States. And so, a woman is, 8 months pregnant, 7 months pregnant, and just goes to the United States for 3 months, has the child, gets citizenship, and goes back to Santiago, and yeah, that's not at all. And I've known many people who have done that over the years. And that's just what it is, right? But many people, though, is not tens of millions, all right? So don't be thinking that's happening all the time. But in any case, there was a study by this team of researchers. I mean, there are many studies, but this happened to be one that, man, it was a big, long team of researchers. And it turned into this intergenerational mobility of immigrants in like these 15 destination countries, right? And they really want to say, like, well, what is one of the impacts of birthright citizenship? And one thing that I'll stop it here, right? So one thing they discovered was, or they concluded was that, well, what we see, and I'm saying this, but this is quite well documented, is that, people who migrate, generally speaking, are people who have a certain kind of drive. And there are a couple different classes of refugees. There are many different classes, but there are refugees who just are refugees because they truly cannot survive where they are. I mean, it's just it's impossible, it's intolerable. And we see refugee camps all over the world, right? Right now, there's so many refugees out of Sudan and Somalia and so on. And it's not a choice. It's just, you're just looking for any way that you can to survive, any scraps of food, anything at all, right? And it is profound the lengths to which people will go to survive. To survive, man. I'll just simply say that. But then you have refugees who are people who are really, it's incredibly difficult to survive, or they're being pursued politically or endangered for one reason or another. And they make a decision to go. And then you have migrants, people who are just making decisions because they're really just trying to do something better for. And what we know across the board is for the migrants and the refugees who are really not in danger of, well, they might be in danger of their lives, but not in danger of not being able to find the next meal kind of thing. But there's a certain kind of drive that people have, right? And so this study that they did and kind of looking at the study on intergenerational mobility of immigrants. And one of the things they find is that, look, birthright, we know that migrants, generally speaking, on average, outperform native-born peoples. Okay, the children of migrants outperform the children of native-born peoples. There's something in that you are just, first off, you're tied to your parents. Your survival depends on your parents' survival. So you're migrating as a unit in a way. It's like a small family or a larger family, or two people or three or four people, whatever. But the survivability is really linked to one another, the bond, the dependency that people have on one another. And so children respond in that way. It's like, look, whatever my parent tells me to do, I'm going to do because I have to do. Like, I have no other alternatives. What am I going to do? Like, I show up here in this strange land, whether it's, Dublin or Minneapolis, Minnesota or whatever, and I got nothing. There's no community there in particular for me to integrate into. I have nothing, man. I'm just out like wandering in the wilderness. And so I'm going to do whatever my parents need me to do. And so we're seeing children of immigrants around the world just outperform native-born children on average, okay? And even outperform, even when social class or economic class, they're at a lower place in that class structure. And what the study came to is like, well, one of the reasons we also see that countries that have birthright citizenship, actually, that the children of immigrants outperform even further, because there's this kind of idea that, hey, we can do, and this is now the second generation, right? We can truly do much better. Or my parents came here as immigrants, but now I'm born as a citizen, but I'm still connected to my parents. And something about that birthright citizenship propels immigrant young people to do much better than they would otherwise if they didn't have birthright citizenship. So it's like it's the promise of citizenship, right? And when we think about the US and what makes the US so what it is, it's like, man, it's immigration. 70 million, over 70 million people living in the US were born outside the United States. And man, there's something about that mentality, that the drive, the mentality, the selective sort of the pull factors by people that's really pretty intense. And it really helps me this place, like what we are. So, you can say, people can say like, there's the current issue with Somali, the fraud that was uh, perpetrated by refugees from Somalia in Minnesota, the state of Minnesota. But that's a small fraction of the refugees from Somalia. So keep that in mind, as one of these things. It's like, look, on average, across the board, it's a very powerful connection. Okay. Um, anyway, that's a thought. There's some news pieces that I have, but I'm still sort of thinking about, yeah, birthright citizenship is still something to think about. I think here's this thing in this article that um, um, when President Trump talks about this issue, he calls America, quote, stupid for automatically granting citizenship to U.S. born children of immigrants. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. I'd say it's very complicated. It's stupid. I mean, it sounds stupid. It's like understand what it is and how it is. But all right. All right, ma'am. Let's go. Let me pose a couple. Yeah, so many children of immigrants have to figure it out themselves. The only thing their parents can advise in this new land is to study and be among the best. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is part of it. You are an outsider unless you're in a community with many other immigrants who are like you and look like you. You're still going to be an outsider. The one thing that you can do is, push school. And of course, we see this. It's not about we talk about certain immigrant groups emphasize school, and all immigrants emphasize school now. And there are very few people that come here and don't emphasize that. And if they don't emphasize it, it's because they're emphasizing work. So, historically, I think about a, immigrants from Mexico and Central America who come with their children, and they're not the first. They want to put their kids in school for sure. That's one of the key things about coming here. But at the same time, after a certain age, you also got to have your kids work. So there are certain complications to that. But all right, man. What else? Uh, Carson Calsan, love the content you are. Man, yeah, yeah. My advice for a long-lasting marriage. First off, don't get married until you have done the footwork that you need to do. Uh, like, look, most relationships aren't long lasting, right? We meet people meet people, they date people. I mean, in the past, it's a little bit different, right? But people meet people, they go out on a couple dates and they move on and they do something else, especially in the modern age with the ability to do online dating and whatever, right? Meeting people. So most relationships are short-lived. And one of the things is that so if a marriage is short-lived, or if two people haven't really come to know one another and come to a lot of really key ingredient and agreements with one another, it's not going to be possible to. It's just a matter of luck whether that relationship is able to withstand the test of time. So my advice to a long-term relationship is you got to come to some fundamental agreements about the most complicated issues like money, children, uh, work time, play time, fundamental issues, how you divide labor up inside the house, how you divide labor up outside the house, uh, who the decisions about how to spend money, where to spend money, with the recognition that whatever decisions you're making right now, or whatever you're thinking about right now, is going to look very different in 5, 10, and 20 years. So you got to have some kind of anticipatory understanding of those things, or at least the ability to have flexibility in one's thinking so that when you get to the more complicated issues as they arise and you haven't encountered it before, that you're able to do that. So that means you have to have you have to have great ability to communicate. If you can't communicate, a relationship isn't going to last unless you just live two separate parallel lives. You come home and you start the day out, you say, okay, see you later. And then you leave. And then at night you come home and you're like, all right, how you doing? How'd it go? And you eat, and then you go and you do your separate thing. And then you go to sleep, and then you start all over. And on the weekends, you just do separate things. I mean, okay, that can last forever because you're not really in a marriage, or you're not in a real relationship. You're just two individuals functioning side by side going through life. So it'd be like me and my neighbor. It's like, okay, there's no difference between the way my neighbor and I interact and the way many married couples interact in living under the same roof. So my advice is, number one, come figure out what the most complex issues are and come to as much of an agreement on those as possible. Like things like finances, man, like spending money is such a huge thing. How to spend money and where to spend money, and and things that people don't even talk about. I mean, it's just surprising to me oftentimes. So communication is, and most everybody can communicate when they first meet somebody. Like especially if you feel some sort of tingling of romantic connection, it's so much easier to communicate with someone, to put our best foot forward. But after a year or two or 5 or 10, life, it's not that person sitting there isn't necessarily as exciting as they were, a number of years ago. So, man, you got to be able to really know yourself and be able to pull something out of the other people and be really fascinated by the other person. If you can't do that, then it's not possible to be in a long-term marriage. You can be in a long-term relationship, but an actual marriage is really, really hard. And it's not impossible. So anyway, that would be my thing. And like recognize if your partner's putting their best foot forward. If there are things, people get married and there are things that frustrate them about the other person before they get married. It's like, look, those things aren't going away, man. You're never going to change anybody. So, or if I have things that I am frustrated about and I'm preparing to marry this other person, man, that's a recipe for disaster. So anyway, that's my advice in a long-term marriage. And it's not about the resentment. Man, people, you can't have resentment. And if you have resentment, it has to be really tiny, and it has to be something that you can laugh at or that has a positive side to it. Like sometimes I resent the fact that, like with my wife, for example, she's really, man, she's we're both Virgos, but she's a Virgo in a way that she just needs organization and cleanliness, man. And she's Polish. Her mom was Polish, so she's half Polish. And she just has that cleaning gene Poles have, man. Crazy. Uh, and so sometimes, like, I'll put something down on the counter and I come back and it's just has moved. And I'm like, dude, the hell? Or I want to put my glass in the sink, but I'm like, wait, do I put it next to the sink or in the sink? Like, where does she want it? Like, I'm constantly trying to navigate around her obsession with certain things. Like, not obsession, I don't want to say it like that, but just she has her way, man. She's like, no, this is how we're going to do it. Now, so I'll feel a kind of sometimes I'll feel some kind of way about it, but at the same time, and this is the key, every time I walk into a room in the house, it's organized and I love it. I love it. We don't go to bed with dirty dishes. I mean, there might be a couple dishes in the sink, but man, it, things are clean, they're organized. I love that. And so I can have a little frustration that will have like a tinge of resentment that like, wait, why do I have to be thinking about whether I put something here or over here? Like, what do I have to think about that? But very quickly that just gets erased by balanced out or erased by the fact it's like, oh, thank God I get these awesome benefits of living with someone who really likes organization and loves to clean. And I've been in the houses of people who are messy and they don't like organization, and I would just lose my damn mind, man. And yeah, I would lose my damn mind. I would hate that. So it's like, yeah, well, you deal with that, right? So anyway, I'm smart enough or I'm aware enough not to go down the rabbit hole of feeling the the annoying or just the resentment kind of thing. But a lot of people hold on. Man, there's a lot that they resent and then they hold on to it.
Dude,
So
the two biggest killers are resentment and money.
yeah, definitely
I've
money.
been, for whatever reason, my feed is giving me a ton of Dave Ramsey and
Yeah,
Caleb Hammer videos. And my God, I feel like half of the conversations aren't even about finances. It's just the people's relationships, and they can't see eye to
yeah,
eye on what they need to do in the future. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's such a
yeah,
huge thing. Like, you should definitely
yeah.
be on the
So,
same page. You don't have to be perfect or anything, but like, you have to
yeah,
be moving together as a team. And a lot of times I feel like people on these shows, they have messed up finances and they don't have the same path and they've built resentment. And the three of those things are just leading to a disaster, which is
yeah,
probably why it's so popular on as a
yeah.
program.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's how you end up on them.
Yeah.
Why you end up being one of the people that somebody like Dave Ramsey would be talking about. Laurie and we're really, we both didn't like to spend money, right? So when we came together, we were both students when we came together. We met, she was an undergrad, at the end of her undergrad studies, and I was at the beginning of my PhD studies, my grad studies. And yeah, we were both poor. Well, we were both working class. We were both were people that really kind of, at a certain point, we had to pay for the things that we needed. Like she was paying for her car insurance, her health insurance. I mean, there are things that, like, she's the oldest, so her parents were like, "Listen, man, you're gonna have to start paying for these things now. You want a telephone? You're gonna pay for your telephone. You want this? You want that? Whatever it was." And I did the same thing. So we knew what it meant. Like we didn't have credit cards. You know what I mean? Or someone said like, "Yeah, here you go." So we both came together in that way. We didn't like to spend money. So our initial dates would be like, yeah, we would, I don't know, we'd hang out at we go to this inexpensive Lebanese restaurant and we'd bring a couple beers in and then we would have falafels and then we would go and listen to music back at my apartment. Like that was it. We didn't go places. We didn't go to the cinema because we didn't want to spend the $10 that it would cost the two of us to go to the movies. Like, why would we do that? Like, we just go listen to music. And so we were cheap, man, really cheap. And then once we got married, those things stayed together. So like, we had such an agreement on that. And man, we've had very few, almost no arguments about money, I would say. And yeah, because of that, which is really key. And I sometimes think like, wow, man, how brutal that would be if one person was wanted to save money and the other one wanted to spend money, and they didn't make an agreement about that before they legally tied their futures together. Like, man, that would suck. So, yeah, that's fundamental. And
April in chat said that they've been married for over 25 years. If you have any advice you'd like to throw in the chat, that would be cool too.
yeah. Mm. Well, by the way, Laurie and I, we were married, or we met back at Rutgers University. So I was starting my PhD work, and she was finishing her undergraduate work, and so uh, and we just really stayed connected. 25 years, man. 25 years is a long time. Here's what I would say is for that, by the way. I I never I didn't okay, so and it's probably good that I didn't really know this, and nobody can know it. Like it's just not possible to see into the future other through lenses other than the ones that we currently have. Like last night, Laurie and I were walking, and we were having a conversation just about retirement, and like everything that we were saying was through the lens of right now, you know, where we're living, who our friends are currently, the things we do now, etc. But I was saying, wait a minute, if this is like 10 years from now, let's just say, right, I'll definitely be retired. Well, I'll never retire in a certain sense, probably, neither will she, but uh, it's not going to look like this. Well, none of the friends that we have, they may not even be around. Like, who knows? It's just not possible to predict into the future. So this is something I talk about all the time, right? The prediction research that people have. You can't see the future except through the lens of the present, which makes predictions so difficult, and why people who do futurism, like future predictive analysis, are so fascinating. And some people are just so outside the box because you have to really step outside the box to see something differently. So anyway, so we were having this conversation, but we were missing it because we're like, look, what everything we're saying is about right now. It's not about 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, if we're even alive, right? So one thing I will say is there's such a huge difference between like 10 years in a relationship and 25 years and 40 years. And there are things now that, man, if I just about this stage in my life, if I would have known what I know now, I I don't know that I would have made the decision ever get married even in the first place, right? I mean, I'm totally, I mean, it's just like you can't, the pressures and the things that happen, I think what I want to say is like you can't even begin to understand. I just never imagined what I experience about life right now. I didn't imagine it 20 years ago. That's all I want to say. It's like in a conscious way, but in a subconscious way. Just the feeling that I have when I wake up in the morning is so different than the feeling I had back when I was 40, let's say. And so when I look at 25 years, or a little over 25 years or whatever, I'm like, oh man, Lori and I, we've been together 40 years. We just passed the 40-year mark. And like 25 years, man, if I go back 15 years, it's just so different. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. It's so interesting. But yeah, patience, man, so much patience and so much self, uh, just, oh man, here's my guy. Charlie's cutting along. So much just the ability, you gotta be like self-reflective, but you have to be just willing to be humble and to willing to admit that even though you might think you have the right way of seeing things, if you trust the person you're with, you gotta trust the person, man. You gotta First off, if you don't trust the person, just like that they're thoughtful and they want the best for themselves and for you, as much as you want the best for yourself and for them, and forget about trusting about whether they're going to step out in the relationship. That's just, if you don't have that, if you don't trust at that level, you're not even off the starting block, man. Damn. So it's a trust of really that they that like Lori, for example, I know that she always wants the best for herself, right? And I know that she always wants the best for me. And those two things are just in operation together. And I feel the same way. And there's sometimes when I want to put myself ahead of her, my needs ahead of her needs, because it's just something I really want. And other times I'm gonna accept that no, she's gonna come first here. But in the end, when we add them all up, it's like no, it's a partnership, and that I want the best for her. I want her to thrive. I want her to be healthy. I want her to have a really good life. And I'm not always going to act and I'm not always going to do the things that she wants. Like there's things that she's going to want me to do that I'm just like, look, yeah, you want me to not take this trip or whatever it is to go golfing today or whatever, but I'm doing it. 'Cause that's what it is. So you get, but over the long haul, I know that she will also turn because she wants me to do what I want to do to really thrive, and I want that for her. And so that's a huge, huge piece of it. Um, I want her to be the best version of herself that she can be as much, and I know that she wants that for me, even though sometimes it's really difficult. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, and then you say like I changed the most in the last 5 years. Uh, yeah, there's also times, man, when you things just shift. You wake up one day and you realize, whoa, hang on a minute. I think I'm not really interested in. I'm feeling like I may not be interested in this thing that I always imagine I would be interested in. And man, which so easily can be this person I'm living with. If you don't have that deep connection, it's so simple. Just like I can see how people could just wake up one day and be like, man, I'm not feeling it anymore. Oh my God, I see that doorway is right there. It doesn't, that doorway for me doesn't have a handle on it. Like I see, but I see the doorway. It just doesn't have a handle. Like I know what it is. I imagine it. Yeah, it's just not part of it. But man, I see how easy it would be to put a handle on that thing and just open it up and walk out, man. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely the team thing. Like we were talking the other day. I was talking with Laurie about we'll be with maybe another couple or something, um, and the one person will talk about my house, my whatever, my what, and but it's their house. It's like it's so shared, like but it's like the ability to be in these separate worlds. Like I mean, like there's nothing that I think about that she's not part of. Yeah, we don't have kids, by the way. Yeah, and April, you have two adult children who've moved out. Man, that must be intense, right? They move out, but they never move out, right? Because they're always in your. They move out of the house, but they don't move out of your mind. If you have kids, that's the thing, man. I had a friend years ago, one of our close friends said she had her first child, and she said, "My life is over. Like my life is over." It's like because I'll never my thoughts will never not be interwoven with the thoughts about this being right here. Man, I never forgot that. We never forgot that. We talk about it all the time. It's like it's so true. And you want your child to go off in the world and do what they want to do, and hopefully they do. And if they don't, it's like, oh, that sucks. Maybe it sucks. I don't know. For some people, it's great. The child stays home forever and never leaves the house. Good, awesome. But man, it's just part of life. It's like being in any other lifelong relationship. You just don't, it's just part of who you are. So yeah, no, kids never move out, right? But that's also the coolness of it. I mean, to have this relationship that it's going to be there forever. Uh, uh, Unless you don't like your kids, which is entirely possible for a lot. I mean, I have a lot of students. I have students that I think, whew, man, if you were my child, maybe I'm just seeing one side of you, but it'd be tough. That's all I'm gonna say. And by the way, we don't have kids. I think we don't have kids because, partly because when we really settled into our relationship, it took so much of our energy. Well, I started teaching when I was 24, college, right? So I didn't have I just was busy. Uh, I was dealing with a lot of young people, man, and I was really teaching. Like I was spending a lot of time outside the classroom with young people, and so a lot of my energy got sucked up, which was good. It was really wonderful, but I think I never envisioned after that point in time. I didn't envision that I would. I was like, I can just borrow other people's kids, and uh, and also when my dad died when I was 9, I had just an immense amount of freedom, and I leveraged that freedom in the most positive of ways. And I, in my mind, it was like, I don't, this is the most important thing for me. And other people having a child would be freedom, or it offers these other amazing things, like to be a parent, man. That's like, how could, I don't know, like that's got to be the most awesome thing in the world. And it is but for me, the most awesome thing in the world was the freedom to just follow my curiosity. And then once I traveled at a single moment in 1982, it was in late August of 82 when I arrived in Spain, or mid-August. And on my very first day, I ate lunch where I was staying, and I came up and I went and took the subway down to the Puerta del Sol, and I walked out of the subway into the Puerta del Sol, right in the center. It's the exact center of Madrid. And I looked around and I said, "Oh my God, this is it. I'm home." And home was the world. And so then I didn't, that was just going to be my life. So anyway, that was part of having kids. And Laurie, we just decided together, we just spent a lot of time in our relationship. And so in part, not having kids, you better have a good relationship, or it's, um, so how do I feel about pushing each other in regards to comfort level? Like my husband is very socially drawn back, and sometimes in me, yeah, now yeah, that's awesome, man. Because if you're not feeling resentment toward that, like if you appreciate his reserve quality, right? Like that's the key. You got to really appreciate the qualities of one another. And Lori's kind of like that. Like she'll refrain from, so well, we have different things. It's complicated actually, but no, I think it's awesome, man. You got to push. Like for example, I would never I would be traveling all the time. And every free moment I got, I'd be on the road. But Lori is more like a tree. She's more rooted. And so she has really taught me how cool it is to be rooted at times. We still travel a lot, but I've taken her around the world, and we've lived abroad. We've done all sorts of things that she would never have done. And so that's the pushing, is pretty cool. Um, all right, man. Um, Yeah. Oh, hey, I want to go back to that. Yeah, yeah, 32. For me, I think now I don't know if it's kind of an interesting piece here. I would have gone with it, right? If I meet a lot of young people that I think to myself, man, if I'd have known, if I'd have had a kid and I knew my kid was going to be like this person, the student in my class or someone that I meet, people who I get to know. I had known my kid would be like that. Okay. Like one of these, like 5 people here or whatever. I don't know who it is. I'd be like, oh man, I'm that kid. Definitely. But I don't know that. And it's you don't know. That's part of what makes being a parent so rugged and it makes it so intense is because you don't know. And your child's going to reflect you to a degree, but your child's also its own child, man. This is like a Khalil Gibran poem on children, man. If you haven't read that, it's pretty awesome, man. Khalil Gibran on children. It's a little short essay that he did called The Prophet. He put them all these essays together in a single book called The Prophet, but the essay on children is really intense. So you can't be your child. You can't predict your child's going to be their child. You can have an impact, and then, so it's kind of like sociology, like we know that the culture and the social structure and people who we come in contact with shape who we are, but not entirely, man. We're also being shaped by factors and forces that have nothing to do with our sociological surroundings. So, yeah, so you just, yeah, we don't know, you know. Um, yeah, and sometimes the grumpiness, it's like, well, sometimes like grumpiness, things like that are like, just let it be. But then the question is, I mean, there's like I walk up to the edge, for me, like Laurie and I all the time. Like we've done a lot of therapy together. Um, in fact, we kind of, in a way, we got married in the office of our first of this couples therapist that we went to back. I think we started like about 3 years after we met because we were trying to just figure out just more effective ways to communicate and man, she just turned some things on their heads. And what we realized, we just saw that the the depth, the depth to which we could go in our communication and understanding of one another were just far greater than we ever would be able to travel as individuals or as a couple. And so it humbled us to a great degree. And so when I think about, times when I kind of wake up and I'm grumpy or I'm something, and I'm always like, hey man, sometimes I see it, sometimes I don't, but we talk about it. And it's like these things, like, oh my God. Um, yeah, this is like, yeah, man, uh, compromise. Wow, everything is compromise. Like, any relationship is compromise. It's constant, man. It's I get compromise with myself. There are different parts of myself that I have to compromise with constantly now. Yeah, yeah. The Dos Equis, man. Yeah. Oh God, I wish someday I'll just tell stories. Uh, yeah, 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 uh, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's cool that you read Gibran as a teen. Yeah. Go back and read it. Well, I don't know. You read it constantly, every day. It's like one of those, The Prophet's like one of those books like Siddhartha by Herman Hesse that, I generally read Siddhartha every 10 years or so. And it's a short book. But I always find that I get things. It's like I forget it and I get things at a new level. And Gibran is like that. Um, yeah. Hey, Mavi Kiraz from Turkey. Hey, awesome, man. I've been watching some of the stuff happening in Turkey right now. I think you have some students that are uprising over there. Are trying to make their points heard. So, uh, yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. Starting a new career where you travel and supporting 100%. Yeah, that's cool. That takes a lot, man. There are time, Lori, there are things that, I mean, the essence is that I, if you're really content in life, like if you're really in a cool spot and content in life, then you really like where you are. And so when your partner, someone comes along and says like, "Hey, I think I'm going to make this change over here," it's like, "Oh shit, man, I'm just here," like you know what I mean? And you got to constantly, okay, all right, well, I'll find a new balance. But man, it's just God, the compromising is just it's endless and it's tiring. You're right. I got to compromise with myself, and I got to compromise with everything else and everybody else around me. So yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like the sacrificing part in your kids. Yeah, you live on forever. That's the thing, man. Like not having kids, I don't have that. And I have ideas, right? So okay, like have an impact on the kids. Maybe YouTube lives forever, and so some of my ideas will live on YouTube forever, but it won't live forever. And then I'll be gone and my lineage is gone, and that's the end of it. And there's something about that that I feel pretty deeply. Um, I didn't feel it 30 years ago, and it didn't matter to me. I was like, yeah, well, whatever. I don't need a legacy. It's irrelevant. But at this point in time, I, I feel that. Like I feel something that's a little bit empty in me that like, oh man, I don't have, I'm not passing something on, and I can go adopt somebody or whatever, but I'm not passing me on. And it's not it's it's yeah, it's profound. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just profound. And it's like, wow. Huh. And that's I guess like a thing that I would never have predicted that. The feeling that I have about that is not something I could have had 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It just wasn't, I never had it before. It only came up at this stage. So, that's pretty it's pretty intense. That's what I mean about the change. So I think about going into the future, like, what 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 will I be? What will I be thinking about? Just like teaching, I used to think that it was that students need me to kind of tell them some things about the world, which is ironic because, well, that's the easiest way to be a teacher, that you just say what you think. I mean, it's not really the easiest way to be a teacher is just ask people what they think, and whatever they say, you just say like, oh, okay, that's cool. What else? Who else has something? But it's hard to see that when you're starting out teaching, because teaching is born of the idea that we pass something on to people who somehow need to have something passed on to them. In this case, wisdom and knowledge and so on. And so I used to think that was a way, and then I got smart enough or just shifted, that I just got tired of trying to come up with something to say that just in the end I couldn't believe in anymore. Uh, and so because after a while in life, if you really remain open to it, just like I gave the example of this guy earlier. Hang on. Here. Okay, so this guy, right? So I talked earlier, if you were watching, but this guy, Trump puts this Pulte guy, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. He's going to serve as acting intelligence director. Now, he's not going to submit him ever to Senate, because they won't accept him, right? So people are like, dude, are you nuts? We're not going to, this knucklehead is not going to be an intelligence director for the United States. I mean, he has absolutely no qualifications whatsoever to talk of. He's going to vet our national security threats. Like, come on, man, right? And so just like, oh my God, this guy, like, it's just like, oh, Dios mío, like, Trump, what are you doing? But I've been over the years. So my thought is that nothing good can come of this at all. Like nothing good will come of this. This is just insanity, right? But over the years, what I've seen is that, well, that's too many examples where that's not necessarily true. First off, the guy's not going to save. He's not going to. he's not going to do anything that's going to be remarkable. We're going to look back and be, oh, thank God for Bill Pulte or whatever his name is. But it's not, but more likely it's just not going to have any impact whatsoever. So it's like, yeah, okay. So therefore, I don't have to say nothing good can come of this because it's completely irrelevant. It will just be a non-impact thing. And the guy is just more people will eventually learn how to say his name correctly. Like I'll hear it on the news and I'll know how to say it, but that's it. He's a nobody with a nothing position. And but who knows? But I don't know. Students change my mind all the time about all sorts of things. Yeah. Yeah. I expect, you know, um, the other day I was thinking about how students, I was listening to a story about students cross, who are adopted cross-racially and cross-nationally. Okay. So yeah, I have students in class who are Chinese by ancestry, but they were, but they were, but they were adopted by a family in the United States, let's say, that's not Chinese. And so then, I, I, for whatever reason, students who are adopted cross-racially, cross-nationally, a fair number, a much higher number than one would imagine, really struggle with that, right? And so historically, when I talk to students, I don't know why. I mean, I do know. I could go on and on now because I've talked to enough people and seen enough research that I kind of get a sense of that. It's an identity thing, and it often hits people about the time they get to my class. They go off to college and they suddenly um, are seeking their identity. And that's my college, right? If they were commuting from home, it would be different. But when they go to a university like Penn State, where the 98% of the students are not living at home, and then they're off to find their own identity. And then suddenly it's like, whoa, damn, I'm who am I? And then there's a struggle there. And so, this is just historically speaking, and it kind of, I don't really understand it. I mean, again, I do understand, but there's a struggle, right? Well, so, I talk about that. I have them talk about it, et cetera, et cetera. And then recently, in the past couple of years, a few years, I've had met all these students who are adopted cross-nationally and cross-racially, who aren't struggling. And I'm like, wait, hang on a second. So now I got to listen to them because something shifted. I don't know what shifted, but these things happen in periods, right? And you might think like, well, it's not just like one or two students either, because I have so many students and so many people. Like, and any given semester, I have at least 7 or 8 people in my class who have been adopted in a family outside of their nationality, right? Which is kind of interesting, right? Their race or their ancestry or whatever. And yeah, so like so now I gotta erase what I'm thinking and I gotta say, okay, what else is happening here? Something else is going on. Now that's a very simple example of something of where students are teaching me, but I rely on students to teach me things. Um, and changed my mind about a lot of things, like, well, anyway, yeah, there we go. Uh, yeah. Well, by the way, Anonymous 1617 says this Pulte guy is an embarrassment. Well, what's interesting is that I, anybody who's in the national security apparatus, this guy isn't going to have any impact whatsoever. No one's going to listen to him. He can go to meetings, he can lead a meeting, but people who are career people in national security are not going to listen to anything this guy says. Okay. Unless he says, hey, let's take a coffee break or something. I mean, nobody's going to, but Trump might, right? This is the thing. But this is what is the problem, But even then, I'm trying to. I think that Trump sometimes, even him, I think he's just poking at at everybody. He's just poking. Even he would, it's embarrassing. I would think if he's really serious about moving this guy forward and thinking that he's going to matter, I don't, then it's embarrassing. Like Trump, you're embarrassing yourself, you're embarrassing us as a nation. But I actually don't think he is. I don't think he, I think at a deep level, he knows this guy's not going to do anything. He's just poking it at everybody else. It's almost like he just wants to say, I can do it. Um, yeah. So that's kind of bizarre now. Yeah. But then I think, God, who would I be if someone said, "Hey, Sam Richards, we want you to come be the CEO of some big corporation because we watch your class and we think you're a really smart guy and we want you to come be our leader." And I'm not smart enough to say, dude, I am not. I'm not your guy, man. I am not qualified. You gotta be kidding me like that. I'm not gonna embarrass myself. Uh, that would be like me going in and trying to teach physics 101 or 200 or physics 400. I don't know. Like, oh my God, who would I be that I'd be, oh, okay, great. I'm ready to go. I'm going to go I'm going to go be an actor on Broadway or something. I don't know a damn thing about acting that I would say yes to that. So that actually, the thing that strikes me is like, dude, how are you even saying yes to that position? I do have siblings, by the way. I have four older siblings. One is no longer alive, and Laurie has three younger siblings. A lot of nieces and nephews. Yeah. Um, I'm not really a wonderful uncle. Laurie's a wonderful aunt. She's like the aunt who has never missed a birthday. She decided up until the 18th birthday that each one of her six nieces and nephews would get a present for her from her. And she sends it to their house, man. She's that person. So every birthday, you're going to get a package from Aunt Lori, and you don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be something cool. She didn't just go get some random thing. Like she picked from day one, from the first birthday on. Well, the first few birthdays, she would write books. She created books and things like that for people, which is pretty cool. Like you have a book that your aunt wrote for you. And there's only one copy and it's yours. But yeah, but they were, so she became that really cool aunt. I'm not. I don't. I was an I was an uncle before I was born. I have a nephew that's 2.5 years older than I am, than me. And so I just, and so then I've got these nieces and nephews that are similar in age. I'm like, because I had three older siblings. And then I have one that's 2 years older than me. So I have two nieces. I was, well grown when my niece and nephew came along, but they mostly grew up on the West Coast, and I'm just not that it's not, but I'm really about me living my life. That's just the reality. And you could say it's the sad reality of it, but it is what it is. I will be that I can regale my nieces and nephews with stories. I got a ton of stories, so I'm probably the cool uncle in that way. But you gotta ask me the stories. And yeah, I'm not gonna remember your birthday, for example. Uh, yeah. But I appreciate aunts and uncles, people who don't have kids and they are like that. That I always wanted to be that way. I wanted to be like that childless, cool uncle. But yeah, I'm just the childless uncle. Yeah, so yeah, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of women are more oriented on time. Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Like, I mean, and certainly Lori just is like birthday she remembers, man. And if you're in her life in some way and she here's your birthday one time and she will always remember. if you open up our calendars, there's so many birthdays on the calendar of different people. I'm like, why do you have that person's birthday on our calendar? And she just remembers. Oh, hey, by the way, RUZD from Belgium. That's really cool. Like you teach graphic design, but you can definitely draw inspiration from sociology. Um, because graphic design, in the end, all graphic design requires some kind of inspiration. Uh, yeah, I mean, I I see graphic people who do different graphic design stuff, and they're like their minds really open, and they're open to different cultures, but mostly just open to different ideas. And the things that they create are so fascinating. And I think it must be because they're open to absorbing new ideas from anywhere in the world or different places, right? So like for me, I can pick up. I read something on religion or something on chemistry or something, whatever, or graphic design, and and just find it really fascinating, so because and that's what keeps me inspired to do lots and lots of things. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Um, no, I don't remember Julie's birthday. I don't. I should. I have no idea. Laurie does though, but I don't. Yeah. Um, yeah. Can you believe it? I have no idea. Your birthday. I don't have the slightest idea when your birthday is. God, it's so terrible. I think it was just recent though. Yeah, damn. Anyway, listen, what would I be doing if I wasn't a professor? Well, first off, yeah, there aren't many jobs as sociology professors, so I would probably be doing what any number of gazillion other things that people are doing who have studied sociology. Uh, I don't know for me what I have no idea, honestly. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's so striking to me that uh, uh, I don't know what I would be doing. I'm sure I can't even say I'd be doing something where I'm working with people because that's probably not really the case. I'd probably be doing something where I'm working more by myself. Uh, yeah. Yeah. One year I forgot my birthday. Instead of my mom, I was at a really pivotal age too. I was like 15 or something. And we completely forgot my birthday. And it was 2 days later. And I went, wait, hang on a second. And that was my birthday. And it's like, oh my God, yeah. And I think that's probably why birthdays, we never really celebrated them in my house. We didn't celebrate anything a lot in my house. Yeah, we were just living, which is really odd. Well, I don't celebrate a lot of things today. I do when I'm in another culture, I like to experience things because I like to know how and why people do what they do. But um, I don't, I don't, I don't celebrate much of anything. Which unfortunately for Lori, by the way, it's only been fairly recently that I've realized that she appreciates celebrations, which, there's a thing, man, that I knew that early in our relationship. She made that pretty clear that she appreciates celebrations, not like gifts per se, like I need to buy me a gift, but a surprise, just a very simple surprise. And I just don't, I'm really dense in that way. I'm so absorbed in my own mind or something that I forget. And so like I have to, anyway, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of odd. Um, hmm. Okay, listen though. It is 16:35 here on the East Coast. So everything, all of my clocks, everything is set to the 24-hour clock. So it's just so much easier for me to survive in that way. I'm gonna listen, Russian, man. Wait? Are Ruzid, where or why did you learn Russian? That's a really interesting question. Man, Russian would be such an interesting language. Um, every language is interesting, really, honestly. Um, you know. Yeah, okay, Alex Coleman, finding meaningful connections with storytelling still counts. Yeah. I think I could ask, yeah, if that I think I think I think stories have great value. I would have liked to have had well, I spent a lot of time around people in their 80s when I was a kid. I had all sorts of neighbors. And some of them they just had stories. I mean, some of them I had to drag the stories out of them, but I was always fascinated by those who had interesting stories. And I thought, when I get to a certain place in my life, I want to be able to have interesting stories. If I make it that far, I want to be able to have something to say. But the thing is, people have to ask. If they don't ask, I don't know. I'm not going to just start talking about a story. Although once in a while I will. Once in a while I'll just be like, yeah, F it, man. I got some interesting stories. I'm going to dominate the dinner table with some stories. I rarely do that though, but sometimes I do. Yeah, wife of 20 years. Yeah, that is definitely uh, Korean from Uzbekistan. She was raised in the Russian language thanks to them. Oh yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah. So many Uzbeks in Korea right now. There's like this pipeline of people from Uzbekistan in Korea. Yeah, living in Korea. It's so fascinating. I was in this little town in south of Seoul, like 2 hours south of Seoul, and man, I just suddenly there's like an Uzbek store and like a restaurant, and I'm like, damn, man. Yeah, it's really well. The only hobby I used to play drums. That was a big hobby, and now just studying, but golfing. Yeah, I've been golfing a lot. I used to golf when I was young, and now I've taken it out more. Um, which is a blessing and a curse, man. I will say, golfing is not for the weak of mind, soul, and spirit. Just like aging, you just got to be ready for disappointments at every single moment. It's like when you're aging, it's like, oh my God, the pain in my arm, or this or that. And golfing is the same way. You hit one shot and you think you got it. And yeah. All right, here's a random story. I'll tell you. Here's a quick random story, and then I gotta go. When I have this thing about being I'm allowed to be awkward. I like awkward for whatever reason. I don't know why. Just awkward. I like dad jokes are awkward, right? So I appreciate dad jokes. I appreciate awkwardness. I don't know why. I just can be kind of that way. Last night I was at the store and I didn't think I was being awkward, but Laura was like, dude, you're out of control, man. That person thought you were being serious, and she was a high school student. God, she felt terrible, but I wasn't saying anything bad. But it was just one of those things. Okay, anyway. So when I was doing stand-up comedy back when I was an undergrad, in my early 20s, and I had been on stage, but I had been on stage as a drummer. The first time I was on stage, I think I was 13 years old. But I was behind drums, and then I really enjoyed being on stage, but I only enjoyed being on stage when people really couldn't see me. It was just one of those things that I could feel hidden. So I started doing stand-up, and then it's just me and a microphone, right? And so I had to find ways to kind of deal with the crowd because it's not easy working with a crowd, man. It's just people are there expecting you got to make them laugh. And these folks that do this, it's really tremendous, actually, the courage that it takes to do it. And the courage the first few times, actually. So I didn't do it enough. Today would be very different. I would be able to have a stage presence of sorts, but then I didn't really have a stage presence. Um, so I I did this card trick whereby I would get people to pick a card, and I can get them to pick the right card. I mean, there's a trick to everything, right? So I had this trick, and I would know they would pick a card, and I knew what card they had, and then I would just kind of hide the card out of the way, and then I would ask them. I'd pull a card out, and I'd say like, "Hey, is this your card?" Now you're doing a card trick, and so you can't mess it up, right? And I'd say, "Hey, is this your card?" And they would say, "No, it's not my card." I'd be like, "Oh man!" And then so the whole place, you can just feel the oxygen just get sucked out of the room. And then and it was just like, oh my God. And the awkward silence and the awkward kind of laughing, like, oh my God. And me, I would just be like, oh, okay, whatever. I'd move on, tell another joke or whatever. And then I'd reach in my pocket and I'd be, wait, hang on a second. And I'd hold her card out and I'd say, wait, hang on. Is this your card right here? And it would be their card, and then the whole place would bust out in applause. But the point being, I could sit with that awkwardness of them thinking that I messed up a card trick, man. And like, oh, it was so hard because that imagine being in a room of 100 or 200 people. I think maxed out, it was probably about 200 in this particular comedy club. It's like, oh, imagine being in there and this guy messes up a card trick, right? And I was always the amateur guy. So I was the guy that would be like the MC. I would come out as the first comedian, but then I would MC the show, that was kind of a thing. Like, hey, here's so and so, and whatever. He performed in New York and LA and whatever. But imagine sitting there and having to sit with that awkwardness. But anyway, so that probably speaks volumes to my ability to do what I do. And week in and week out, that I just could sit with that and not just be able to do that joke because it really was a joke. Well, it was. But listen, man, the key about stand up is you got to put a little shtick together. And when you think of something that's kind of funny or clever, you write it down. And you just need 5 or 10 minutes of a routine that you can tell a story. And my mistake is I often come up with really funny things, but I forget to write them down because I think I'm going to remember it and I don't. And I think in ways I'd love to do stand up again. But in order for me to do that, um, I'd have to be able to do it constantly. So anyway, actually, yeah, I don't know. I'm actually kind of can be very boring as a dinner guest. Okay, but I gotta go. So, okay. Be well, everyone, and we will see you for sure next Wednesday, and maybe we'll pop in before that. If Jeff has his way, we will. All right, man. Be well. Take care.